let's take Barack, for example. You still take my breath away. How?
Right.
With your anger? With your complete inability to just get with the program and show up?
At the inauguration, so I have to walk in like a lonely soldier?
We've all seen the images. The power couple at state dinners, the birthday tributes, the carefully staged moments of unity. But behind the polished Instagram posts and the legacy-building documentaries, something is cracking. And this time, the fractures aren't just whispers in DC backrooms or buried in blind items. They're out in the open, impossible to ignore. The question isn't whether the Obamas' marriage is in trouble. It's how far the fallout will spread, and who gets caught in the crossfire. It started with the absences. Michelle Obama, a woman whose presence at political events was once as predictable as the changing of the guard, skipped Jimmy Carter's funeral in January. Then came the inauguration. While Barack sat in the crowd as Donald Trump took the oath, Michelle was nowhere to be seen. The official line? A scheduling conflict. But in the world of power couples, where every handshake and every empty chair is dissected like a national security briefing, no one bought it. Not when the Obamas had spent decades moving in lockstep, their public unity as meticulously crafted as a state dinner menu. And certainly not when, just days later, Barack posted that birthday tribute, a photo of them holding hands across a dinner table, the caption calling her the love of my life. The timing felt less like romance and more like damage control. The lighting was off, the smiles didn't reach the eyes, and the internet, ever the armchair detective, noticed.
Gotta spend a minute on the Obamas, because there seems to be some momentum picking up in the rumor mill about their marriage. All right, I'm gonna bring you what I know.
Then came the rumors. Not the usual DC chatter about policy clashes or ego battles, but something far more personal. Insiders, people connected to both the Obamas' inner circle and the entertainment world, began talking. First, it was the quiet claims that the couple had been living separate lives for years, their marriage a political necessity long after the passion faded. Then, the names started dropping. Jennifer Aniston's was the first, surfacing in the kind of tabloid headlines that usually get eye rolls from serious journalists. But this wasn't just another celebrity gossip cycle. The whispers had teeth. In Touch Weekly ran a cover story in August 2024 alleging an affair, citing sources who claimed Michelle felt betrayed by the attention Barack was giving to the actress. Aniston's team denied it, calling the claims beyond absurd. But the denial only fueled the fire. Because if it was so ridiculous, why had Aniston herself addressed it on Jimmy Kimmel Live just months earlier, waving off the rumors with a laugh but making sure to clarify she'd only met Barack once? That's not how you handle baseless gossip. That's how you shut down a story before it spirals. And spiral it did.
So the truth about Jen and Barack is that there is no truth.
There is no
untrue.
truth.
You know Barack Obama.
I've met him once.
Met him once.
I know Michelle more than him.
What is there a truth about you and Michelle that we should know?
That is not true.
The timing was too perfect. Michelle's absences, Barack's sudden, uncharacteristic social media activity, the way he'd been spotted at Hollywood events, rubbing shoulders with producers and A-listers, while Michelle stayed silent, her public appearances dwindling. Then there was the letter. Not the birthday post, the other one. The handwritten note Barack sent to Melissa Rivers after Joan Rivers' tragic end in 2014. A gesture of grace, sure, but also a reminder of the comedian's final bombshell. Her claim, just weeks before her procedure went wrong, that Barack was part of the rainbow community and Michelle was transgender. The kind of allegation that would have been dismissed as Rivers being Rivers, if not for what happened next. The medical errors, the lack of consent, the family's lawsuit, and the conspiracy theories that followed, the ones that suggested Joan knew too much, that her comments weren't just jokes, but hints at something darker, something the Obamas couldn't afford to let see the light. Now, fast forward to 2025. The Rivers controversy had faded, but the questions never really went away.
Disturbing new details emerging tonight about the of Joan Rivers. One of the doctors reportedly conducted an unauthorized procedure on her and then took a selfie in the operating.
And then Larry Sinclair resurfaced. The convicted con artist who'd been peddling stories about Barack since 2008, claims of private encounters, substances, a night in 1999 that allegedly ended in a hotel room, suddenly had a new platform. Tucker Carlson, fresh off his exit from Fox, gave Sinclair a megaphone and the internet did the rest. The old Rivers interview clips recirculated. The timeline of her demise got another look, and the Obamas, who'd spent years ignoring the fringe noise, found themselves back in the crosshairs. This time, though, the noise wasn't coming from the fringes. It was coming from inside the house. Because here's the thing about power couples. Their strength is also their weakness. The Obamas aren't just a marriage. They're a brand, a political dynasty, a media empire. Higher Ground Productions has deals with Netflix. Barack's memoir sold millions. Michelle's book tours draw stadium crowds. Their combined influence is a currency more valuable than any endorsement deal. And if that brand is built on a lie, or even the perception of one, the collapse wouldn't just be personal. It would be financial. It would be legacy ending. That's why the birthday post felt so off. Not because the marriage is necessarily over, but because the stakes have never been higher. Every move now is calculated. Every silence is a statement, and every absence is a clue.
It's not the marriage that I am familiar with. That sounds like hell. And that's what Michelle Obama is describing Barack Obama as being. They have nothing to talk about unless they save it until dinner. He smacks his gums and she's like stewing all day like this. I mean, this is real contempt and hatred in a marriage. Like,
yes, it was a couples therapist. First of all, she had on a couples therapist, which is very interesting, her selection of guests, and Barack wasn't there.
Take Michelle's no-show at Trump's inauguration. On the surface, it made sense. She'd spent years criticizing his administration, calling his policies a betrayal of American values. Why would she subject herself to that? But insiders say it wasn't about Trump. It was about Barack, about the way he'd been behaving in the months leading up to the event, more visible in LA than DC, more interested in production meetings than policy discussions, about the way he'd allegedly been leaning on Michelle to reconsider her refusal to run for office, blaming her for the rise of Trump, for the fractures in the Democratic Party. Sources close to the family say the arguments had gotten ugly. Not shout down the halls ugly, but cold, distant. The kind of tension that doesn't explode, it just rots. And then there's Jennifer Aniston.
Publicist, where you're just like, oh no, what's it gonna be? Or the email saying, you know, some cheesy tabloid is gonna make up a story, and then it's that.
Yeah. Does your
I was not
publicist
mad
ever
at
go
it.
like, is there any truth to this? Or is it...
No, that is absolutely untrue.
Well, I know it's not true.
Yeah.
I just don't know if everybody knows.
Well, it is untrue.
Some people, it is untrue.
The actress who, by all accounts, should have been a footnote in this story, a tabloid blip. But the rumors refused to fade, and not just because of the magazines, because of the way Barack's world had been shifting. Higher ground was his new focus, and Hollywood was his new playground. Aniston, with her own production company and her deep ties to the industry, was suddenly in his orbit. They were spotted at the same events, their names appeared in the same meetings. And when Aniston's team issued that denial, it wasn't just about the affair, it was about the timing, the way the rumors had flared just as Michelle's public appearances dwindled, just as Barack's social media turned saccharine, just as the whispers about their separation started leaking from people who weren't just tabloid hacks, but journalists with sources in the West Wing. We can't ignore the pattern here. The Obamas have always been masters of narrative control. Every memoir, every interview, every carefully staged photo op has been about shaping their story before someone else does. But this time, the story is slipping. The absences, the denials, the way Barack's birthday post felt less like a celebration and more like a hostage video. And then there's the timing of it all. The inauguration, the funeral. The way Michelle's absence at both events wasn't just noted, it was dissected. Because in politics, as in marriage, it's not the fights that destroy you, it's the silence, the empty chairs, the way the world starts to wonder what you're not saying.
Not to add insult to injury, but there's a Daily Mail report out today saying Kamala Harris's marriage may be on the rocks. Like everybody's on the rocks. Again, I will say I love the Daily Mail, but the sourcing appeared weak. It was like people who know the couple, but like I don't know if it's any better than that. But they're saying she's blaming him in part for her loss because he turned out to be such a hot mess liability. You buy it?
And now, the questions aren't just about whether they're sleeping in separate beds. They're about what happens if the facade cracks completely, about the fortune tied up in their joint ventures, about the political capital Barack still wields, the way his endorsement can make or break a candidate, about the way Michelle's own ambitions, once rumored to include a presidential run, seem to have evaporated, leaving her in a role she reportedly never wanted. The woman standing beside the man, smiling for the cameras, while the real power plays happen elsewhere. If this marriage ends, it's not just a divorce. It's a corporate dissolution, a brand implosion, a rewrite of history. Because let's not forget the other names in this story, the ones that keep popping up like bad pennies. Larry Sinclair, with his decades-old claims and his sudden resurgence. Joan Rivers, whose final words about the Obamas now feel less like a punchline and more like a premonition. The way her family still talks about that handwritten note from Barack, the one that praised her humor, her ability to make people think. The irony isn't lost on anyone. Rivers made people think about the Obamas in a way no one else dared. And then she was gone. And now, the thinking has started again.
Michelle Obama is a man. His words, quote, tranny. And he, Joan Rivers, because Joan Rivers exposed the truth.
Only this time, it's not just the comedians and the conspiracy theorists. It's the journalists, the insiders, the people who've spent years covering this family, who know the difference between a rumor and a story that's about to break. They're the ones saying the Obamas are living separate lives, that the birthday post was a Hail Mary, that the Aniston rumors, no matter how absurd, are a distraction from something bigger, something that involves lawyers and NDAs and the kind of quiet negotiations that happen long before the public gets a press release. We don't know what that something is yet, but we know this. When the Obamas start posting throwback photos and calling each other the love of my life in the same week, their marriage is the subject of DC's hottest gossip. It's not romance. It's strategy. And when the strategy starts to show, that's when the real story begins. The question is no longer if the marriage is over. It's what they're willing to do to keep the world from finding out, and who gets left behind when the truth finally comes out. Because in a town built on secrets and a marriage built on image, the most dangerous thing isn't the scandal. It's the moment the actors stop reading from the script. And right now, someone's gone off book. The only question left is who flips the page first. The Obamas didn't just build a marriage, they built an empire. And empires don't crumble overnight. They erode from within, one compromised deal at a time, one silent partner buying their way out, one too many nights where the public story no longer matches the private ledger. We're not talking about a love story gone sour. We're talking about a merger where the assets are no longer aligned, where the biggest liability isn't infidelity or resentment, but the cold math of what happens when the brand outgrows the partnership. Because let's be clear, the Obamas aren't just a couple. They're a corporation, and corporations don't divorce. They restructure.
They've similarly, like a fire extinguisher, they called Obama to come on in, and he didn't have the same impact. It was like he wasn't the same, didn't have the same, perceptible gravitas that he did. Remember when he would pull all those people at the Berlin Wall in 2009 and everybody like this, and they thought, wow, what a great moment for America, this man of color with all this. But now he wasn't pulling, and he wasn't coming across convincing, and he was applying that linguistic style that he does, that he used to have such effectiveness with. It wasn't.
Start with the money. Higher Ground Productions, the media company Barack and Michelle launched in 2018, has a deal with Netflix reported to be worth over $200 million. That's not pocket change. That's generational wealth, the kind that doesn't get divided in a clean split. Then there are the book deals. Michelle's Becoming sold over 17 million copies. Barack's A Promised Land moved millions more. Speaking fees that run into the hundreds of thousands per appearance. Endorsements, board seats, the kind of portfolio that requires lawyers, accountants, and a small army of PR strategists just to keep the narrative straight. And narratives, as we've seen, are the real currency here. Because when your entire public identity is built on the idea of a partnership, when your political legacy, your cultural influence, even your marketability depends on the world believing in Barack and Michelle, what happens when the world starts to see the seams? Sources familiar with the couple's financial arrangements say the real tension isn't about love, it's about control.
She is not sorry.
They are looking forward. All the women in your life are looking forward.
All the women in my life are looking forward to being able to live a more normal life.
Yeah, but still not entirely normal. Obviously, everybody's under the microscope at all times.
A little bit more.
And you're staying in Washington, D.C., which is unusual for an exiting president.
Michelle, according to insiders, has long chafed at the way her career was sidelined for Barack's ambitions. She put her law career on hold when he entered politics. She played the role of the supportive spouse, the doting mother, the flawless first lady, even as she reportedly resented the sacrifices. And now, with their daughters grown and Barack's political future uncertain, the question isn't just whether she wants out of the marriage, it's whether she wants out of the business. Because make no mistake, that's what this is, a business. And in business, when the CEO and the COO no longer see eye to eye, the board starts looking for an exit strategy. Then there's the political capital. Barack Obama isn't just a former president. He's the Democratic Party's kingmaker, the man who can swing primaries with a single endorsement, who still commands a room full of donors with a phone call. His influence is the reason Joe Biden stepped aside when he did. It's the reason Kamala Harris is where she is today. But that influence depends on one thing, the illusion of stability. A divorced Barack Obama isn't just a man with a failed marriage. He's a man with a failed brand. And in politics, perception is everything. If the Obamas can't sell the idea that they're a united front, what does that say about the deals they've brokered, the candidates they've backed, the legacy they've spent a decade polishing? The answer is simple. It says the emperor has no clothes. And in D.C., nothing gets you exiled faster than looking weak. But here's where it gets interesting. Because the Obamas didn't just build their empire on their own. They had help. And not just from the usual suspects, the agents, the managers, the political operatives. They had help from the people who knew how to keep a secret. The ones who understood that in the world of power couples, the real work isn't the public appearances, it's the cleanup, the NDAs, the quiet settlements, the way certain stories get buried while others get amplified. And if we've learned anything from the past few years, it's that the Obamas are masters of the controlled narrative. But control only works when everyone plays by the rules. And right now, someone isn't.
What do you tell them about this insanely corrupt system that's supposed to be the controlling operating system of this greatest country the world has ever known, this experiment in self-government, and it's just deeply corrupt?
It is. And so what we do is we go back and talk about all those sacrifices that were made so we can have these options and opportunities in the hopes that our kids take a pause and actually become part of the solution and respect.
Let's talk about the patterns. Joan Rivers wasn't the first to make those claims about Barack and Michelle, but she was the loudest. And then she was gone, her final months marked by a medical procedure that went catastrophically wrong, a clinic that later admitted to malpractice, a family that settled out of court. Coincidence? Maybe. But in the world of high-stakes image management, coincidences have a way of looking like strategy. Then there's Larry Sinclair, the man who's been shouting into the void about Barack since 2008, whose claims were dismissed as the ravings of a con artist, until Tucker Carlson gave him a platform. And suddenly, the old rumors didn't seem so ridiculous anymore. And let's not forget Jennifer Aniston's team, who didn't just deny the affair rumors. They shut them down with a speed and ferocity that suggested they knew exactly how dangerous those whispers could be. Because in Hollywood, as in politics, the cover-up is always worse than the crime. And that's the thing about suppressed truths. They don't stay suppressed forever. They fester. They resurface in the most inconvenient ways.
How do you feel about Michelle Obama's hair?
I think she looks great.
You like the bangs?
I like the bangs, and it's going to save him a fortune on Botox. He shows them to the forehead now, just around here.
Like the way Michelle's absence at Trump's inauguration wasn't just about politics, it was about optics. The way Barack's birthday post felt less like a tribute and more like a hostage negotiation. The way the denials from Aniston's camp came just a little too quickly, with just a little too much legal precision. These aren't isolated incidents. They're pieces of a puzzle, and the picture they're forming isn't pretty. Because if we step back and look at the bigger story, what we see isn't just a marriage in trouble. It's a system where certain questions never get asked, where certain names never get mentioned, where the people who know the most are the ones who stay quiet the longest. And systems like that don't just collapse on their own. They get taken down by a leak, a whistleblower, a disgruntled former ally with nothing left to lose. Or in this case, maybe by a woman who's finally done playing the game. Michelle Obama has spent her entire public life being the perfect partner, the supportive wife, the graceful first lady, the doting mother. But behind the scenes, the story is different. Friends say she's been checking out for years, that she's tired of the politics, the scrutiny, the constant performance of a marriage that stopped feeling real a long time ago. That she's ready to walk away, not just from Barack, but from the whole machine. And if that's true, then the real question isn't whether they'll divorce. It's what she'll say when she no longer has to pretend. Because here's the thing about empires, they're only as strong as their weakest link. And right now, the weakest link isn't Barack. It's the story they've been selling, the story of the perfect partnership, the power couple, the love that conquers all. But love doesn't conquer anything in the real world. Money does. Power does. And when the money and the power start to shift, the love story becomes a liability, and liabilities get cut loose.
I was on her podcast, and she said that when she watches her Real Housewives, her brother and Barack would kind of criticize her entertainment and say it was dumb.
If I listen to ESPN for an hour, it's like watching the Real Housewives of Atlanta.
Absolutely.
You know? I mean, you know, it's the same drama, and they're yelling at each other, and they don't get along.
So where does that leave us? With a man who's spent his entire life controlling the narrative, suddenly facing a story he can't spin. With a woman who's spent decades playing by the rules, finally realizing she doesn't have to anymore. With a media empire built on the idea of unity, now facing the very real possibility of division. And with a public that's starting to ask the one question the Obamas never wanted them to ask. What else have they been lying about? Because if the marriage was a facade, what does that say about the books, the documentaries, the carefully curated image of a family that was supposed to represent the best of America? If the love story was a myth, how many other myths are hiding in plain sight? The answers to those questions aren't just personal, they're financial, they're political, they're the kind of answers that could rewrite history. And that's why this isn't just a divorce story. It's a story about power, about who gets to control the narrative and what happens when the narrative starts to control them, about the cost of keeping up appearances and the moment when the cost becomes too high. The Obamas knew this day would come. They've been preparing for it, in their own way, for years. The question is whether they're ready for what comes next, because the world they built doesn't allow for half measures. You're either all in or you're out. And right now, someone's heading for the door. So tell us, do you think Michelle's ready to walk away for good? Or is this just another act in the greatest performance of their lives? Drop a comment below and don't forget to like and subscribe for the next chapter of this story. Because trust us, this is far from over. Until then, stay curious, stay skeptical, and remember, the truth is out there. You just have to know where to look.